The discovery made by the scientist in Europe quickly spread to the rest of the world. As more researchers began to study the strange behaviors of Earth's creatures, it became clear that the planet's animals were not only acting together, but were being guided by something ancient, something far beyond their individual capabilities. The scientists theorized that this collective intelligence was tied to the very life force of the planet itself, as if Earth itself was alive and conscious, and the animals were its protectors. As humans began to piece together this newfound understanding, they realized that the animals were not only protecting the planet from the Xerixians, but were also protecting humanity from the invasion. The bond between them had been there all along, hidden beneath the surface of their instincts, and now it was awakening in response to the threat. In a laboratory in America, a team of biologists studied the interactions between different species. They were stunned by what they found. It wasn't just the large predators or the herds of mammals working together. Even the smallest creatures were participating. Ants were dismantling Xerixian technology in perfect unison, while bees created a barrier around vital human infrastructure with their swarming patterns. The planet's ecosystems were syncing together in ways that had never been observed before. The realization that Earth's creatures were connected by a collective intelligence sent shockwaves through the scientific community. But it wasn't just scientists who were noticing the change. Everyday people were witnessing the extraordinary behavior of animals firsthand. In urban areas, stray cats and dogs were leading groups of humans to safety, while horses worked with riders to steer vehicles out of danger. When a massive storm hit a coastal city, dolphins helped guide boats through the choppy waters, allowing humans to escape the rising tide. Even the insects were doing their part in the chaos. Thousands of ladybugs swarmed a Xerixian command center, while spiders spun webs that entangled alien machinery and disabled their weaponry. No matter where the Xerixians went, Earth's creatures were already there, waiting and working together to protect their home. In the midst of this newfound unity between humans and animals, a small group of survivors in a remote mountain town discovered a hidden cave system that seemed to have been untouched for centuries. Inside, they found an ancient mural depicting the story of a time long past, where the creatures of Earth had risen up to defend the planet from an unknown invader. The mural showed not only animals but humans working alongside them in perfect harmony, as if they had always been one with the Earth. As the survivors examined the murals, it became clear that this was not just a symbol of hope, but a warning. The Xerixians were not the first to try to conquer Earth, and they would not be the last. The animals had always been Earth's protectors, and now they were ready to rise again to defend their home and humanity. This revelation struck the survivors to their core. It was no longer just a battle for survival against an alien race. It was a battle for the very future of the planet, a battle where humanity was no longer alone, but had powerful allies in the creatures they had once taken for granted. The connection between humans and animals had always existed, but now it had become their greatest weapon in the war for Earth's survival. The council chamber buzzed with unease. The Cinder ambassador's words echoed in the minds of every leader. Present the silence from Earth was not just a technical anomaly. It was the opening of a door into the unknown. Every empire and every species in the galaxy began to question the implications of what was happening on Earth. The silence was not merely a pause in communication. It was the sound of something vast and ancient stirring, something that had been dormant for eons, and now was waking up. The first cracks in the galaxy's stability began to show, and no one was prepared for what would follow. The military fleets of the galactic powers readied themselves, each one suspecting the worst. The ships positioned near Earth were the first to feel the effects of the strange force emanating from the planet. Navigation systems malfunctioned, and communication lines were disrupted. Entire fleets were stranded, unable to receive orders or make contact with the rest of the galaxy. Panic spread like wildfire. Some of the leaders ordered their ships to pull back, but others felt the need to advance and investigate. Their orders were clear: Earth had to be examined up close. No one knew what was causing the silence, but they all feared that it could be a weapon of force unlike anything they had ever encountered. The most advanced ships in the galaxy, from the great empires of the Arcanar and the Dracon Confederacy, were dispatched to the Earth system. Their crews were highly trained, and their technology was superior, But the moment they crossed into Earth's vicinity, their systems began to fail one by one, like pieces of a puzzle falling apart. First, their communication arrays went down, then their weapon systems became unstable, and finally their navigation controls locked up, forcing the ships to drift aimlessly through space. Their experienced commanders cursed the unknown force that was so effortlessly disabling their ships, and no one knew how to fight back. Meanwhile, on the planet itself, Earth's leaders scrambled to understand what had happened. They had no idea why the rest of the galaxy had gone quiet, or why they could no longer communicate with their allies. Their military forces stood on alert, waiting for a sign, an indication of what was to come. The silence on Earth was unnatural. It felt as if something larger was at play, something that had the power to affect the entire galaxy. But the governments of Earth were blind to the full scope of the danger they faced. Back at the galactic capital, whispers began to circulate about the Cinder's cryptic warnings, their ancient knowledge, and the potential link between the silence and the long-forgotten First Ones. No one had heard of the First Ones in millennia, but their stories were etched into the galactic consciousness. Their technology was legendary, their power unimaginable, and their disappearance had been as sudden and complete as Earth's silence. Was now the idea that the First Ones could be returning was a terrifying thought, and for some it felt less like a possibility, and more like an inevitability. As the galaxy waited in fear, the silence stretched on. No one knew if it was a sign of impending doom or a test of something far greater. But what was certain was that Earth's sudden isolation was a trigger, and whatever followed would shake the very foundations of the known universe. And no one could stop it, not yet, not until they understood the true nature of the force behind the silence. With the Xerixian machine destroyed, the battle for Earth reached a new turning point. The invaders were now facing a united force, the like of which they had never seen before. As the animals continued their coordinated attacks, they now had the advantage. The humans and their allies were no longer reacting, they were taking control of the battlefield. In every part of the world, Earth's creatures and humans were launching precise strikes against Xerixian outposts and military bases. No longer did the invaders have free rein to advance across the planet. The Xerixians had underestimated the planet's defense mechanisms, and now they were on the defensive themselves. In Asia, a group of tigers and panthers led an assault on a key Xerixian supply depot. They moved with a deadly elegance, their steps synchronized with one another as they stalked through the jungle. No longer were they solitary hunters. They were a deadly force, united in their mission. Their purpose was clear, and their cooperation was flawless. They outmaneuvered the Xerixians at every turn, disabling their equipment and cutting off their supply lines. Meanwhile, in the Amazon rainforest, a team of humans and jaguars moved through the dense foliage, setting traps for the advancing Xerixian forces. The jaguars used their natural camouflage to hide in plain sight, while the humans carefully laid explosives and barriers to slow the enemy's progress. Together, they created an impenetrable web of strategy that kept the Xerixians at bay. In Europe, the lions that had once roamed the savannas were now engaged in urban warfare. The creatures had adapted to the concrete jungle with incredible agility. Using the shadows of tall buildings to move unseen, they struck from unexpected places, ambushing the Xerixians and forcing them into retreat, while the humans coordinated their attacks from above. As the Xerixians began to retreat further, their forces were spread thin and vulnerable. Earth's creatures took full advantage of their disarray, using every element of the planet's environment to attack from all angles. They were no longer simply reacting, they were anticipating the Xerixians' moves and counteracting them with devastating precision. But even as the tides began to turn, there were still pockets of resistance. The Xerixians weren't giving up easily. They had entrenched themselves in key locations and were desperate to maintain their hold on Earth. To secure their retreat, they began to unleash more advanced weaponry, including a new breed of combat drones designed to neutralize the planet's defenses. Yet even this seemed futile against the combined might of Earth's defenders. The creatures had adapted and learned from every battle. Each time the Xerixians introduced a new weapon, the animals found a way to counter it with quick thinking and flawless cooperation. The humans continued to evolve alongside their animal allies. They no longer viewed themselves as separate from the creatures. They fought beside the bond that had been formed was stronger than ever, and it was this unity that became their greatest weapon. No longer were they just defending their homes, they were fighting as one with the Earth itself. In the skies above, a group of eagles swooped down to disable Xerixian satellites, while falcons and hawks worked in perfect unison to eliminate enemy drones from the air. Every aspect of the planet's ecosystem had been mobilized to protect it, and the Xerixians found themselves in a battle they couldn't win. The tide had fully turned, and the Xerixians knew that their time on Earth was quickly running out. No longer were they the invaders, they had become the prey, and the creatures of Earth had become the hunters. The battle for Earth's future had entered its final phase, and the outcome was no longer in doubt. The planet's defenders were unstoppable. The first signs of movement came as a ripple in space itself, a tremor that reverberated through the fabric of reality itself. It was subtle at first, barely noticeable to the untrained eye, but those who were attuned to the shifting of energy patterns across the galaxy felt it, a quiet hum in the background that slowly grew louder and more insistent. It was as if the very heart of the galaxy was waking up from a long slumber, and all eyes turned to Earth as the source of this disturbance. Fleets from the galactic powers converged on Earth. They had been preparing for this moment for weeks as reports of the silence spread, and the fear of something far older and far more dangerous began to solidify. Each fleet was an armada of warships and advanced technologies. Some were sent by the Council, others by individual empires, each hoping to claim the mysterious power of Earth for their own. The atmosphere around Earth had become tense and crackling with anticipation as the fleets entered the solar system one by one. As the first of these ships crossed the event horizon of Earth's proximity, they encountered an unexpected force, a barrier of sorts that seemed to shimmer in and out of existence, like a veil wrapped around the planet. This barrier was no ordinary shield, it bent space itself, making it impossible for the ships to move or communicate with the outside galaxy. Every vessel that came too close to Earth found its propulsion systems disabled, and its navigation systems thrown into chaos. The crews on board scrambled to understand what was happening, but their efforts were futile. Inside the largest of these fleets, the Commander General Korath of the Drakon Confederacy was no stranger to the mysteries of the galaxy, but nothing he had ever encountered had prepared him for this strange force. At first, he believed it to be an energy signature of some sort, something related to Earth's silent weapon. But as his fleet began to experience complete technological failure, he realized something far more unsettling was at play. He had expected to encounter hostile forces, perhaps automated defenses or ancient war machines, but there was nothing here, nothing but the growing sense that they were being watched by something far greater than themselves. His ship, the Vengeance, drifted helplessly as its systems flickered and then failed entirely. The once powerful warship was reduced to a floating hulk, powerless and vulnerable, surrounded by the vast emptiness of space, with nothing but the cold void between them and Earth. General Korath's mind raced. He knew that whatever force was holding them in place was far beyond the capabilities of any technology he had ever seen. His first thought was retreat, but the fleet was stuck. They could not leave. They were prisoners in space, and the galaxy's fate seemed to rest on the silent planet before them. Meanwhile, the other fleets were experiencing the same phenomenon. One by one, the vessels of the galactic empires were halted in their tracks, unable to advance toward Earth, unable to communicate with one another, unable to break through the invisible force that held them. Their panic began to spread as more and more ships fell victim to the force, and the situation became more dire every passing moment as the silence continued unabated, with no answers and no way to escape it. Back at the Galactic Council, a sense of dread had begun to settle into the hearts of its leaders. They had not expected this level of resistance. Earth's silence had become not just a mystery, but a direct threat to the stability of the entire galaxy. And now, with each passing hour, the question on everyone's mind was clear: what was Earth hiding, and who or what was keeping them all at bay? General Korath stared at the black void beyond his ship's viewport, his mind racing as the forces holding his fleet captive grew stronger. With every passing moment, The once proud Draken warships floated helplessly, unable to move or communicate with one another. The eerie silence around Earth seemed to pulse with an unseen energy, as though the very fabric of space was being twisted and reshaped. The situation was spiraling out of control, and Koreth could feel the pressure mounting with each hour that passed. Aboard the Vengeance, his officers scrambled in vain to restore functionality to their systems. Every command they issued seemed to fall into the void. Their efforts to call upon reinforcements went unanswered, and with no contact from the outside world, the crew began to feel a creeping sense of isolation that was quickly turning to fear. The fleet was stuck in place, surrounded by the unknown, and as the tension grew, the questions began to surface. Was this the work of an unknown enemy, or had Earth somehow become the instrument of this new force? For Koreth, the answer was becoming clearer. The power that was locking them in place was not external. It wasn't a weapon fired by Earth. It was Earth itself. Something deep within the planet was reaching out with an ancient force, something that had been waiting for the right moment to manifest, and now it had revealed itself to the galaxy. This silent power was more than a threat to the fleets. It was a threat to the entire galactic order. Back on Earth, beneath its surface in the heart of the planet, a discovery was being made, one that would shift everything humanity thought they knew about their world and their place in the galaxy. An excavation team from Earth's secret division of advanced research had uncovered the true nature of the ancient power that had laid dormant for centuries within a forgotten vault hidden beneath the Earth's crust. The team had unearthed a machine, one that hummed with an energy that defied all known science. Its surface was covered in intricate patterns and symbols, the same symbols that had been found across the galaxy in ancient ruins, the same symbols that were now being seen in the strange phenomena surrounding Earth. The machine was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. It was vast and complex, and as the researchers activated its systems, the ground trembled with a force that reverberated through the planet. The machine's purpose was not entirely clear, but one thing was certain: it was not a relic of a bygone age. It was a tool, an ancient device that had been buried beneath Earth's surface for a reason, and now it was waking up. Callan, the exiled historian from Earth, had long suspected that Earth's history held secrets far older than anyone realized, but even he was unprepared for the magnitude of this discovery. As he watched the machine come to life, he realized that the awakening of this power was no accident. It had been waiting for something specific, and now that it was activated, there was no turning back. The first pulses of energy radiated out from the machine like ripples in a pond, spreading across the galaxy. The effects were immediate and far-reaching. Entire star systems felt the tremor of its power, and soon the fleets trapped in Earth's orbit began to experience a shift in the very nature of their confinement. The energy that had held them in place seemed to falter for just a moment, but that moment was enough to spark a new wave of fear throughout the galaxy. What had they awoken? What was Earth truly hiding? As the galaxy watched, Earth's silence was no longer just a mystery. It was the beginning of something far greater and more terrifying than anyone had ever imagined, and no one knew what the future would hold as the force beneath the planet continued to awaken. The energy pulse from Earth spread like a cosmic shockwave, a ripple of power that shuddered through the fabric of space itself. It was unlike anything the galaxy had ever experienced. Ships in orbit around distant stars felt the tremor in their hulls, and sensor arrays went haywire. Entire fleets trapped within Earth's gravitational field began to see the effects firsthand. The energy from the dormant machine deep within Earth seemed to saturate space around them, bending reality itself. The fabric of the galaxy felt thin, as if everything could unravel at any moment. General Koreth aboard the Vengeance struggled to maintain control of his fleet. The ships that had been caught in the mysterious barrier began to experience fluctuations in space-time. Their trajectories shifted in unpredictable directions, and the once reliable systems of his fleet became erratic. It was as though the galaxy itself was reacting to Earth's awakening. Something in the depths of space was shifting, and the galaxy's power structures began to unravel. Across the galaxy, ancient networks of communication that had been silent for eons suddenly sparked to life. Ancient systems powered by long-forgotten technologies began transmitting signals of their own, strange, garbled messages, filled with patterns and codes no one understood. Some believed it was a message from the first ones themselves, a warning to those who had awakened the power beneath Earth's surface. But no one knew for sure what these signals meant or what they were trying to convey. On Earth, the excavation team that had uncovered the machine found themselves fighting to understand the implications of their discovery. As the machine hummed and pulsed beneath their feet, the ground shook with an intensity that rattled the structures above the surface. Callan the historian stood among them, his mind racing as he processed the information unfolding before him. He knew that what they had uncovered was far more than an ancient artifact. It was a key. It was the mechanism that the first ones had left behind, a device capable of altering the very nature of reality itself, and humanity had unwittingly awakened it. The ancient machine had been dormant for millennia, waiting for a catalyst, something to trigger its activation, and now that it had been activated, its power began to spread outward with a force that could not be stopped. Its influence reached beyond Earth's atmosphere into the very core of the galaxy. Its effects were not limited to the fleets around Earth. The energy was disrupting the cosmic balance. It was destabilizing star systems, shifting the orbits of planets, and causing entire sectors of space to flicker and fade as if reality itself were being warped by the machine's awakening. Callan realized the implications of this discovery were beyond comprehension. The galaxy was on the brink of a collapse, and Earth was at the center of it. No one could predict what would happen next. The machine's power was unpredictable, and its full capabilities had yet to be understood. But one thing was certain: if humanity did not regain control of it, the entire galaxy could be torn apart, and nothing could stop it. As the galaxy's greatest minds scrambled to find solutions, chaos began to spread like wildfire. Fear and paranoia seeped into the hearts of the galactic leaders. As they tried to make sense of the energy emanating from Earth, the great empires began to fracture. Old alliances were tested, and new rivalries began to form as each power began to consider the possibility of taking control of Earth's power for themselves. But with the machine's influence expanding and reality itself warping around them, no one was certain who could control the future or if anyone would survive what was coming next. The galaxy had never been more uncertain than it was now. Earth had become the focal point of an event that threatened to shake the entire universe, and no one knew if they could stop it in time, or if it was already too late. The galaxy teetered on the edge of oblivion. The energy from Earth's awakening had created a ripple effect that spread beyond their understanding. Reality itself was fracturing. Star systems became unstable. Entire fleets drifted through space, unable to maintain their course, as their once reliable technology became increasingly unreliable. The very laws of physics seemed to bend and warp around Earth itself. And all the while, the machine beneath the planet continued to hum, a deep thrumming sound that echoed in the minds of every living being across the galaxy. The once calm corridors of the Galactic Council were filled with panic as leaders from across the stars demanded answers and solutions, but none came. No one could explain what was happening or how to stop it. Those who had once held immense power now found themselves questioning everything, their influence dwindling as the machine's power continued to expand. The situation had gone from bad to worse, and the galaxy's greatest minds had yet to comprehend the true nature of the force that had been unleashed. On Earth, the excavation team continued to study the machine. Their discovery had far surpassed anything they had imagined. Callan, the historian, now stood at the forefront of their efforts, his mind racing with the knowledge that the machine was not just a weapon. It was something far more ancient, far more complex. It was a key to an interdimensional power, something that had been hidden away by the first ones in an attempt to prevent its destructive potential from being realized. And now that it had been triggered, humanity had unwittingly unleashed the very force they had feared most. The surface of Earth began to shimmer with strange energy. As the machine's influence grew stronger, the skies above turned an unnatural hue. The once clear air thickened with static, and the ground itself seemed to pulse with an energy that was alien and unfathomable to humanity. The team worked tirelessly to study the patterns emerging from the machine, but as the hours passed they realized that there was little they could do to reverse what had been set in motion. The machine was no longer dormant, it was alive, and it was expanding. General Korath, aboard the Vengeance, stared at the chaos unfolding before him. His fleet had been drifting aimlessly in space for what felt like an eternity. The once mighty warships, now nothing more than helpless floating targets for an unseen force. As his crew fought to maintain some semblance of order, Korath's thoughts turned to the other fleets that had been ensnared in Earth's pull. He knew that they were all facing the same challenges, their weapons useless, their ships powerless in the face of the energy surrounding the planet. His mind raced with possible solutions, but all of them led to the same conclusion. There was nothing to be done. Earth had become a force of nature, and they were its unwilling subjects. Back at the Galactic Council, representatives from all corners of the galaxy gathered in emergency meetings. Desperation filled the room as the leaders began to consider drastic options. Some suggested sending military forces to Earth to attempt to seize control of the machine. Others argued for diplomacy, hoping to find a way to communicate with whoever or whatever was responsible for the events unfolding across the galaxy. But all of them knew the truth. There was no way to predict what would happen next. Earth had become the nexus of an unimaginable power, and the galaxy's future seemed to hang in the balance. As the forces around Earth continued to struggle with their powerless ships, and the galaxy's structures teetered on the brink of collapse, there was one question on every mind: what had Earth awoken, and what would it mean for the future of the universe itself? The galaxy stood on the edge of ruin. The energy from Earth had not only bent the laws of space and time, it had shattered them. Entire star systems flickered out of existence, and strange anomalies began to appear across the galaxy. Massive rifts opened up in space, swirling with dark matter and unknown forces, pulling ships and planets alike into their depths. As the machine's influence expanded, the very fabric of reality seemed to warp and distort, bending to its will. The boundaries between dimensions grew thin, and all who tried to approach Earth found themselves unable to comprehend what was truly happening. In the heart of the chaos, Kalen stood before the ancient machine within Earth's deep caverns, his heart racing as he realized the full scope of what had been unleashed. The machine had not just been dormant, it had been a sentinel waiting for the right moment to break free. And now that it had awoken, it was altering the very structure of the universe itself. The first ones had designed it to reshape reality, to control the flow of time and space, to become the masters of all existence. And now Earth was at the center of this power, with no way to turn it off. Humanity had unknowingly become the key to the galaxy's fate. The machine was tied to them in ways they couldn't yet understand, and no one could predict what would happen if they lost control of it. As the energy pulsed outward and reality continued to fracture, Kellen realized there was one truth that could not be ignored. Earth could no longer be left to its own devices. It was no longer just a planet, it was a weapon capable of reshaping the entire cosmos, and the galaxy could not afford to let it fall into the wrong hands. Above Earth, General Korath and the other fleet commanders watched in horror as their ships continued to drift in space, their systems still crippled, their once great forces powerless against the influence of the machine. But as they watched the skies above Earth pulse with energy, something changed. The very air around them seemed to hum with a strange frequency, and then a voice echoed through the silence. It was not a voice in the traditional sense, but something far more primal, a presence felt within their minds, a presence that spoke without words yet conveyed its message with undeniable clarity. "We are the first ones, and Earth is ours to command." The voice rumbled through their minds, its tone both ancient and terrifying. It spoke of a time when Earth was not just a world of flesh and bone, but the center of a grand design, a design that had been interrupted by the rise of lesser species. And now Earth was awakening once more to restore balance to the galaxy. But not all would be allowed to participate in this new order. Some would be left behind to perish, while others would be given the